Good evening, guys. Sorry about this, but I want to do this in a better setting, but I'm out in the field right now, and what was that? I don't have much long, but I wanted to tell you, I've dug up something out here. I've been researching a lot. I didn't think I'd come across this. I think they're after me for it, I don't know, but I found it, guys. I found the lost footage. I found the cryptid among us. Holy shit, I gotta go!
Welcome to the Cryptid Among Us show. This will be our first episode. If you've had a chance to check out our introductory episode, please, do that if you haven't. But if you have, we want to say thank you. We're going to begin this first episode with a local legend, and that is the White Bluff Screamer. Also in this episode, we will tell you about the Werewolf of Wolf Springs, and how these two are related, not just by in the area of said sightings and stories, but also other things. We start out with the story of the White Bluff Screamer. It starts in the year 1920, though reports and stories have said that this could have been sooner, especially with the second part of this episode of that story. But it all starts in the small town of White Bluff. The creature resides in the hollers of the Trass Creek area in the small town. There are different stories and tales of this mythical creature, as well as descriptions of the said creature. I will now go into a small history of the town. Then we will dive into more about the creature, as well as stories including the most famous, or you could say well known. The history of White Bluff. White Bluff was settled in 1806. It was incorporated in 1869. It was named for the White Bluffs overlooking the Turnbull Creek. In 1806, Fort White Bluffs was constructed, followed soon after with the White Bluff Iron Forge. One of the most well-known attractions in the, county? Yes, not county or city, is the Montgomery Bell State Park, which happens to be where this story kind of fits into. But we're going to dive into a well-known or influential person, you could call it, and that is Mr. Colonel William James. He graduated from the Tracy Academy in nearby Charlotte, which you could say is basically a private school. He went on to graduate from West Point Army in 1872, and then went on to fight in the Indian, Spanish American, and Philippine Wars. He went on to return back home with financial gains that he had made from his time in the service through investments, as well as inheriting his mother's land that she had apparently had a bunch of. In 1923, William James School was built, with the first public school in the area being burned to the ground in 1879. Obviously, it was built with land donated by Colonel James. Little known fact is, he is entombed within the current building. Isn't that pretty crazy?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I've heard that my entire life is that he's in the walls.
Yeah, that's one thing I've heard. Like some of this stuff, like these stories, I haven't heard, another one I haven't heard a lot of before doing this. But I've heard about that, though, about the guy being buried and shit, and it being haunted, just crazy, stuff.
You definitely get kind of, well, at least I did. I mean, I didn't go to school there, but, I've been there.
Well, neither did I, but I've been there, yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't like it.
Get that, like, eerie, spooky feeling.
Exactly.
And in 1971, 1972, the original 1923 building was demoed. It became a junior high in 72, by the way, as well. The new building did. And then in 99, 2000, it became what is known as a middle school, which basically means instead of 6th grade or 5th grade through 9th grade, it was 6th through 8th grade. Pretty neat. I guess, back in the day, that's how further back in the day, you had schools that were 1 through 12. So I guess, for some reason it went through that, and then as time went, they decided to change it. I'm not a history major on school or anything like that, so I couldn't tell you a good answer on that one.
I got you.
But that was just a little brief history of the town I kind of wanted to share with everybody.
Just so you have a little bit of history of the small town of White Bluff.
The small, podunk-ass town of White Bluff.
Yes.
But we're going to dive more into the creature right now. What do you think? You think we should?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. We've had our fun with the history. Now let's figure out what we're doing with the with this creature. Okay, depending on who you ask, or what you read or look up, you're gonna find different versions of what this creature looks like. The White Screamer, per se. One is it's a female type figure. It's similar to that of like the Irish folklore banshee, which kind of it makes sense too. I mean, like you almost wonder. It's like, all right, take the banshee and take the White Screamer. That could be something very similar because of how they both are characteristically. And then apparently I've heard or read, should I say, that it is usually followed by a white mist, or there's a white mist being like that's separate from this entity or creature or lady, should you say? Wherever it appears, the ground below it will be scorched. So like if this white mist is hovering over some like grass or something, it'll scorch it.
See, I've never heard that aspect of it, so that's pretty interesting to me.
I think so too. And then another version is that it's similar to the legend of Werewolf Springs, which is obviously another story we're going to cover.
Yeah.
But for now, let's look into to one thing they have in common, and that's they both reside in this town of White Bluff, this area. I mean, supposedly the stories are even 5 miles apart. I mean, not the stories, but these creatures, like from stuff happening.
Right.
I mean, it sounds pretty interesting. Now, let me tell you the most famous story. There was a family, like I said, we'll say it was in 1920 just for example's sake. This family built a house on a piece of land in this area. And, they were farmers and stuff. It was a man, a woman, and 7 kids. Well, shortly after moving onto this property and beginning their American dream, you could say, every night they were hearing howls and like screeches, and just it was scaring the kids. It was freaking out the parents. I mean, they didn't know what was going on, and it was constantly happening. So one night, after we've been dealing with this, I mean, I'm sure like the dad probably had his breaking point and was like, I've had enough of this. He grabs a gun, heads out, and starts looking around the property and checking the nearby woods for this creature. Upon returning closer to his homestead, he begins hearing different screams, and screams of not just one creature, and not even that, screams he's never, he wasn't hearing on those nights, but they were still familiar to him. As he was running and pacing and sweating and, already freaked out because he's hunting this creature. Now he's hearing cries and screams of what it is to be his wife and kids in the middle of this, night out, whatever. He gets back, and to his horror and his fears that he probably must have had as he was, trying to get back to the homestead, he sees, like, bits of his family hacked and strewn across the property. I mean, I can only imagine, like, the terror that this poor guy had, But then again, it makes me wonder, because upon researching this, the only thing I was able to find is that this house, so like where it happened, does exist. Maybe the foundation's left, but apparently there's gravestones as well. But yet, upon looking at other people covering this topic, whether it be YouTube or through articles or using my own research, I've yet to find any kind of photographic evidence. And if anybody that comes across this podcast and might have that, or you'd be able to get a hold of that, or put us in touch with people who might be able to get us in with that, please do. Because with anything on this show, if we don't have information and somebody else does, we want to hear it. with that being said, let's get into a particular story that my co-host Jess has to say on the topic of the White Screamer. I guess you could say actually it's more of an experience, but I'll let her tell you.
So when I was like 16, of course, I'm starting to drive. I was one of the first of my friends that could actually drive. So, get my friends in the car. We're all driving around. We hear about, we'd already been talking about it to begin with, just the White Bluff Screamer in general. And I can't remember exactly who all was in the car with me. I'm pretty sure I know one of them. But we were in the car and she's like, so you can get to where the White Bluff Screamer is at by going down this road. Now, from what you've told me, and I looked up the area where it's supposedly at, and it's on one side of Montgomery Bell. Now,
yes, because Montgomery Bell State Park's it's a pretty damn big park.
Yeah, it's a big ass
park. It stretches into what, like 2-3 counties?
Yeah. So, like, where we were at, and I know you're pretty familiar with the area. So we were coming down the road where the drive-in was. So coming down that way, headed toward White Bluff. I can't remember the exact road name, but it wasn't too far from the theater. But supposedly you turn down that road and it ends up in a cemetery.
Yes.
And you go all the way down, and that's quote unquote as close as you can get to the actual spot. So we go down there, and I'm like,
as far as you can get with like 3 roads, basically, right? Without hiking, obviously.
Exactly. That was the whole thing, because like we wanted to go, but
yeah, you didn't want to. You're not going through.
We didn't want to go in the woods.
You're 16 years old. You got you a car. You got your license. You hang out with your friends. You're not you're not into this as it is. But it's like, hey, we're young. We're bored. We're in a small fucking town.
Let's check it out.
Let's check out this local legend, like most teenagers do. Good-hearted fun.
Yeah. So we drive down this road. We get to the cemetery. You can't go no further than that. So we get out, and we're just kind of hanging around, bullshitting and whatnot, talking about it. Like, I don't hear nothing. And this is all, like, it's not early in the morning. It's not late at night. It's almost dusk. So, like, it's still pretty light out, but it's not dark at all. So, sun's going down, and, we're still bullshitting, and we hear it.
Hear what you think is the White Screamer. You hear screams, right?
Yes. Heard 2 screams, and I've never gotten in my car so fast.
Now, you wouldn't say these were maybe coyote screams, would you?
I've heard a coyote scream.
Okay, so this is a scream you've never heard kind of creature make.
It honestly sounded like, to me, from what I remember, and if I heard it again, I would be like, yep, that's it. But it sounded like a cross between some type of animal and a human, if that's even possible.
Like most people have said, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because you haven't done much research into this.
No.
And that's what I have researched and seen. A lot of people basically have described those sounds like you have. That's pretty interesting.
I mean, like, a lot of stuff doesn't scare me, but that scared me.
I mean, that would scare me.
Yeah. I hopped back in the car so fast and was screaming at them, like, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. And as soon as they got in the car, like, I didn't even wait for anybody to buckle up, turn the car on, fume, out of there.
Yeah, you were like, hey, this ain't cool.
I flew the fuck out of that cemetery.
This was more than we bargained for.
Yes, and, then afterwards we, went and hung out and talked about it and eventually got over it, but...
Yeah, but still, that must have been terrifying being 16,
yeah.
And...
Hell yeah. Absolutely terrifying.
Man.
That was my little story I wanted to share.
Now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, and if I did, please forgive me, but upon doing my own research and trying to find this stuff, I could not find an exact picture of this house, whether, being, recent or older. I couldn't find anything on these gravestones, but according to a legend, a historian of the legend, he claims to, that the house is still there. It's fallen in, of course, maybe the foundation's just there, and that there are gravestones. But once again, like this episode and anything we do in the series, always take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But
they're stories.
It's just strange, though. I mean, I want to see the stuff, and I know I mentioned this not too long ago. and I'll mention it again, and I'll keep stressing it. If you have an experience, you have a story that we're doing, if we put it out there on our social media and stuff and ask, and you have something you want to talk about, please feel free to tell us,
Yeah.
Whether you want to be a part of this show or, have your story told, we'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think with that being said, we're going to move on to the second part of the episode, and that is the Werewolf of Wolf Springs. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Okay. In the late 1860s, a circus train derailed along the southwest boundaries of present-day Montgomery Bell State Park, which we mentioned a minute ago in our previous story. A lot of the animals escaped, including the Wolfman of Borneo. It's Borneo. So however you pronounce that, Borneo, I would guess. I mean, I'm not the best pronunciator, so you'll have to forgive me for that one. But if you'd like to know more about it, it is Borneo.
Yeah, I think that may be Borneo.
Now, all these animals were caught except those two.
Very interesting.
Now, different reports and stories I've looked into will describe either two wolfmen or a male and female wolf-like hybrid human creature. Stories go that a few years later, a landowner and his hired hand were traveling down a country road in proximity to where present-day Highway 47 runs southwest of the park, of Montgomery Bell State Park. Mm-hmm. The two were stalked and then attacked by some creature, causing them to abandon the wagon they were riding on and run into the woods in opposite directions, which happened to be in the vicinity of these springs.
How interesting they went in opposite directions, though.
Well, I mean, honestly, it was more of a fight or flight type of thing, I would say. I mean, it's like, hey, I'm getting out. I don't care which way you're going, I'm getting out,
Right.
So, or maybe they're like, you go this way, I go that way, You
go first, I go first.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But, unfortunately, the creature went after the hired hand, and then the farmer heard screams and pleas of mercy from the hired hand, though the body was never discovered. After this happened, a local posse gathered to hunt and kill this beast. Heading into a clearing near the springs where there was indications of a predator's hunting ground, meaning that, obviously there was some form of animal hunting around this area, they decided to take a goat and tie him up in the middle of the area. Then they decided to,
live bait.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, anybody seen Jurassic Park?
Yeah. Always use a goat.
I mean, when I was watching that, I was like, man, damn, dude, I wonder who got inspiration from what? The people telling the story or people watching Jurassic Park? So after they tied him up, they decided to break off into pairs. And then, as they're hiding in the nightfall, what was described to be a Sasquatch-type creature appeared and went after the bait. Go figure. I mean, the guy was hungry, or the creature was hungry.
Sasquatch-type creature.
Exactly. We went from werewolf to Sasquatch. Now, in some of these stories, this creature is referred to being like Sasquatch, which is another kind of weird conspiracy type situation, because it's like, is it a werewolf
before either,
or is it a Sasquatch? I mean, there's stories, around here of people seeing them and stuff, but that's all with, a grain of salt.
Right.
So after seeing this creature lunge or go after the said, bait, the posse then decided to fire their weapons at it and then light their lanterns so they could, obviously have better eyesight to see, better seeing through this darkness and all that jazz.
Right.
But the point is, when they were able to see where the goat was, he was no longer there, or it was no longer there.
He done swiped him.
The creature wasn't there either, and two men from the posse were missing. So, the bait was gone, the creature that supposedly took the bait was gone, and now two members of this group is gone.
Very interesting.
So after this happened, there's another story about a big game hunter attempting to slay this beast because, obviously if this has happened, somebody's got to take this thing down.
Well, yeah, obviously somebody wants that prize money.
So he holds up in a nearby cabin, which happens to be on the, what is now Montgomery Bell Park. For 3 nights he spends in that cabin. And on the 3rd night, after 2 nights of not hearing anything, nothing, probably thinking, hey, this is a hoax, I'm wasting my time. Hopefully I got paid in advance for this, or maybe I should have charged more for this, or this is the easiest money I'm going to make.
Kind of like that last moment before it's like, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, this is either going to ruin my reputation or I'm going to be rich. One of the two.
Exactly.
Well, on the 3rd night, he hears howls in the distance, and the howls become closer. So through a cabin window, he decides to take aim at the creature. So he's firing off at this creature, or what he thinks is the creature, and the bullets aren't even hitting him, apparently. Or if they are hitting him, they're not even phasing him. Or it, should I say. Then the creature proceeds to bust down the cabin door and attack the man as he's firing upon this creature. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Upon having his last 2 rounds in his pistol, he was only saved from the creature's malicious attacks when the sun began to rise and the beast fled into the nearby woods. Now,
how convenient.
The area of Werewolf Springs is actually called Hall Springs, which can be accessed through Montgomery Bell State Park's 11-mile overnight hiking trail.
Oh, fuck that.
Exactly. I mean, I know I need to get into better shape, and,
I ain't getting into
that. I don't want to do that.
Absolutely not. I will pass.
I ain't worried about this. I ain't worried about this or the White Screamer. I'm worried about my clumsy butt, hurting my own self.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, the creature is rumored to have lived in a cave located in what is called Creech Hollow, which is obviously in the same area. Supposedly, there were animal remains in the cave and outside, though, to kind of debunk this part, it was known that the residents before, the government bought this this land and made it into a park, the farmers and stuff that lived there, they were known to have dumped, their deceased, animals there, so there you go.
Yeah, that could definitely debunk it for sure.
And as I've said before with the White Screamer, these wolfmen of Borino, to my knowledge, have never been proven to exist. All I've heard or seen, should I say, is just the name. I've not seen actual photographic evidence. I haven't seen newspaper articles. I hadn't even seen newspaper articles written about this train derailment. Once again, though, this is in, the 1800s, so you can say what you want with that.
It's like word of mouth type stories.
Exactly.
That get passed around
and plus, on this show, we're not here to debunk or prove anything.
No.
We're not. We're always going to keep an open mind, but at the same time, we're always going to keep what we hear or what we do or say with a grain of salt, as should you, the viewer or listener. Now, back to what I was saying with the Wolfman, I have not, found anything, and if anybody has knowledge or photos or articles that can help me, prove this or show these men, feel free. But, interesting, and here's kind of where you need to really take it with a grain of salt. While I was doing this, I came across an actual circus act called the Wild Men of Borino. Not the Wolfmen, but the Wild Men. Now, they were a circus act in P.T. Barnum's company. But, unfortunately, that's where these 2 examples or stories, that's where they end, unfortunately. The Wolfman / Wild Men. The Wolfmen, Wild Men, that's, that's it for them. That's
right.
As far as they relate, of my knowledge. And also, you have local residents who have claimed to hear this creature. But, could it be the White Screamer? Could Jess's experience have been the White Screamer?
I don't know what it was.
Was it the Wolfman? Was it the Sasquatch? We don't know.
That's what's fascinating about it, is it could be any one of those, and it could be nothing at all. But, I mean, I will just say, you hear that scream, you've never heard anything like it.
I've yet to hear it, and I mean, if I do hear it one day, so be it. But
It's not even something that, like, I could replicate to you. Like, even myself demonstrating it.
I mean, I think
It sounded
just one of those
painful,
things.
though. It
Yeah.
sounded painful.
that's wild.
Fuck yeah, it's wild and it was scary.
Now, there's also another story about a young girl that went to collect some water and was never seen again during this time period. That's another story. And also, there's claims from older residents who have said that growing up, they'd never heard anything of the Wolfmen or
I've
the
heard
White
that
Screamer.
too, that
and
they've
that
never heard stories.
they've
of that.
lived in that area. Their family is tied to these areas. So, I mean, once again, everything's with a grain of salt. But at the same time, what could have just heard? You know, like maybe they never heard it because they never were around it. I mean, just like with anything, just because you've never seen Sasquatch doesn't mean there's a possibility that people have. And that's what I like, not with this show, but with, you know, the whole cryptid pseudoscience in general. I mean, there's so much that could be or could not be going on.
Exactly. That's what's fascinating about it.
So, what are your final thoughts on the White Screamer and the weremen, or the werewolf men of Wolf Springs?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, it could be a very high possibility that the White Bluff Screamer is real. Now, the whole thing with the Wolfmen, I mean, did it say in specifics that they were, like, Wolfmen, or were they actual, like, animals?
They said they were a hybrid, but also the story said that it was a female and a male, and not just two males.
Because, you know, if you broke that down, like, to the most, like, basic type of thing, like, I mean, they very well could have not found those two, and they could have, you know, they could have evolved into, like, modern day wolves or something.
That could be quite a possibility, or, you know,
Or
they
it
could still be around and nobody
White Bluff
knows.
Screamer could be hogwash. I mean, it could all be hogwash.
Yeah, or could the White Bluff Screamer and the werewolf be the same? Because a lot of people have kind of said that throughout my research as I was looking, you know,
Right,
reading
they could be
articles.
one
They
and
were
the
they were
same.
saying, you know, they could, and I will say I doubt it. And if you ask me which one do I believe more, that's a toughie, because both of them have stories that are different. Both have stories that I can't prove. Both have, you know, just different things that I can prove.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like I said, like take the house, take the train. Like I can't prove any of that. But this stuff has happened. People have said they've had encounters. You've had an encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yes, I believe it's more. It could be more the White Bluff Screamer. Maybe this did evolve from the train wreck. Maybe that's what the White Screamer became.
That's true too.
I mean, if you have a thought or opinion after hearing this, and you know want to tell us, please feel free to let us know. You can always message us or comment, or you know, keep it up with this. Just our Instagram.
know.
Yeah, our Instagram is Trassy Days, and our podcast, our Facebook. Excuse me, our Facebook is Trass Productions. Now, granted, we've said this in our introductory episode, and we'll say this again, and probably with every episode. Hopefully you enjoyed this, obviously, but two, if you're coming from being a Trass fan to this, keep in mind that this is a more serious thing than Trass, but Trass is our main focus. This show, I wanted to be creative, you know, stretch my creativity, and also share something that I really enjoy, and that's cryptids and pseudoscience, but I wanted to take a more serious approach, like I said, with it. So with that being said, you know, if you have any of these photos, or you have your own stories, or maybe, you know,
You have a suggestion.
yeah, or a suggestion, or maybe you see us post something, you know, like, hey, this is an upcoming story we're doing. Do you have anything to give to us? Or, you know, here's a story you should do, and here's my take, or here's my uncle's take, or here's my friend's take. Anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, share, like. I mean, if you're a fan of this, but you're not a fan of Trassy Days, that's okay. Still be a fan of this. If you're a fan of Trassy Days and not this, still be a fan. But with that being said, I think we're going to end this show.
For sure. We'll see you next time.